Good morning. Good morning. This is Sonia from An Enthusiastic Reader. It's been a while. I am here on my screened-in porch. We call it a lanai here, even though it's not Hawaii. I don't know why they call it a lanai, but that's what we call it. And I wanted to just check in. Last Monday, a couple nights ago, I was lucky enough to be invited to be on Greg from Another Bibliophile Reads and Ellen from Big Hard Books and Classics live show. And I think it was the kick I needed to get back on camera and talk a little bit about the books that I have read since the beginning of the year. And this is going to be like not talking about these books in any detail. Essentially, it's a yes, no, or maybe situation where would I recommend these books? Yes, no, or qualified maybe. So, hi Clemmy. So I'm just going to jump right in and I'm just going to give you the lowdown on what I've been reading over the last few months. Oh yeah, did you just see that bird? There's a little nest up there and you can see that the birds go in through this little hole and then they kind of live in those eaves up there. So that makes our cat Clementine really happy when she happens to notice that that's happening. All right, the first 4 books I'm going to talk about are on the calculation of ritual. So that's a yes. The next book I want to talk about is Are You Happy by Lori Ostlund. This is a book of short stories. They are almost all queer protagonists. And Ostlund is exploring violence in America and the violence, psychological, physical, or gun violence that we perpetrate on each other in society. So most of these protagonists are very quiet, thoughtful people who are put in weird and strange situations. Would I recommend? Yes. I read a book called More Than Enough by Anna Quindlen. She writes upmarket women's fiction. This is a story about a woman who is exploring her DNA situation in her life and dealing with her parents and her husband and dealing with a girl who comes into their lives who's African American and is somehow related to someone in her family. There's a lot of secret keeping in this book. I guess I would say, would I recommend it? Maybe. I didn't love this book, but I thought it was okay, and so it's a qualified maybe. What's happening? I think there's a squirrel on the roof. We have this giant, you can't see it from here, but we have this giant pine tree right here, and it is so full of birds, wasps, and squirrels, and there's just like a cornucopia of life out there. The next book is Clutch by Emily Nemens. I had an arc of this book. This is a story about 5 friends, too many friends, I think, too many characters, and they all have secrets. It's a character exploration, but some characters are explored more in depth than others. What I found from this book is that it is way overwritten. There are so many parenthetical little asides in almost every paragraph that really distract from the trajectory of the writing. And there were too many characters. There was an unforgivable act of animal cruelty in this book that I just couldn't get over. So would I recommend this book? No. I read Seascraper by Benjamin Wood. You know how many of my booktube friends read Seascraper and loved it, and I also loved it. I thought it was so well written, such a small distillation of a very small look at someone's life and the possibility of there being more when a stranger comes to town. And so would I recommend it? Yes. I read Buckeye by Patrick Ryan. Would I recommend? No. I did not think that there were any ideas in this book. It was very long and very drawn out, and I didn't feel connected to these characters in any way, and I just felt like the author was trying to be deep and did not achieve it. There was no level of depth to the story for me at all. And would I recommend it? No. I read Strangers, a memoir of marriage by Belle Burden. This is the memoir of it's a divorce memoir essentially, and a woman who was blindsided by her husband's adultery and abandonment of the family right when COVID was starting. And I'm sure you've heard somebody talking about this book. It's been very, very well written about. There's a lot of discourse about this because she came from immense family wealth, and her husband essentially tricked her out of her ability to have agency over her own money, and he is completely in control of the divorce settlement. But she learns a lot about herself along the way. So would I recommend this? Yes. I remember talking about this book. I had just started reading it the last time I made a video, so many months ago, called The Adjunct by Maria Adelmann. Would I recommend this book? Qualified, yes. I did not like the ending. I was really mad at the ending, but up until that point, I thought it was a really thoughtful exploration of what being an adjunct professor means in today's educational world, how adjuncts are exploited in so many ways. And also the character is very lost in terms of what is her sexuality, what are her goals, why is she's trying to write a novel, why, and just an exploration of her own interiority. But she makes some very bad decisions, and then the ending just made me really mad. So would I recommend? Maybe. I'm getting close to the end of the Maisie Dobbs series, and I read the third to the last book, The American Agent. I only have 2 books left in the series. Again, I mean, I can't say I would specifically recommend this book. If you are invested in the Maisie Dobbs series, you already know it. In terms of the series itself, they're deep into World War II, and so a lot's happening, and I'm going to miss this series so much when I'm finally done. All right, I'm going to talk about the most controversial book of the year so far, Yesteryear by Caro Claire Burke. Would I recommend? Yes, I would. I feel almost embarrassed to say that I actually like this book. So many people that I know that I've seen the discourse on really hated it, did not think it achieved what it needed to achieve. I went into this book knowing absolutely nothing about it. I mean, the tagline for this book is that a woman who is a trad wife influencer on Instagram suddenly finds herself back in 1850 and has to deal with it. I mean, there is so much more to the book than that, and I think it's a bit unfair to put so much on one novel. I didn't go into it with any expectations that it would, solve the problem of social media influencing or traditional wife discourse or misogyny or, politically tinged religion, or religiously tinged politics. I just thought it was a lot of fun. I thought the main character is very unlikable. She's very unhappy. She's very sarcastic. She's really kind of mean. She thinks very mean thoughts, but she's very honest about it. And I thought that the author really pulled off the entire story. So would I recommend? If you've already been influenced by all the people who didn't like this book and don't want to read it, totally fine. No one needs to read this. I liked it. I thought it was a real romp. I read it in like 2 days, and I think some people may like it. So qualified, yes. I have been reading the Dance to the Music of Time series with Priscilla from Evening Reader, and we have read the first 2 volumes of the first 2 books in the first volume. And they center around this character named, what is his first name? Jenkins. His last name is Jenkins. Shoot, I can't believe I've already forgotten this. Nicholas. His name is Nicholas Jenkins. In the first volume, he's like just finishing out his pre-college, pre-university schooling. It's really a character exploration and an exploration of various strata of social levels in Britain at the time. They're just post World War I at the beginning of this first volume, and we're watching him essentially be invited to different homes of his friends and meetings with his uncle, and we get to know him through his observations of other people and their circumstances. And he also impetuously falls in love with a lot of different girls who really don't give him much of the time of day. I am really enjoying it. The second book, I was kind of lost in the names. I kind of forgot some of the relationships from the first book. So that's on me. But I'm intrigued by the project, and I think Priscilla and I have had some pretty good conversations about what's happening in these books, and we're looking forward to reading the third book in the first volume in July and seeing what happens. So would I recommend? Qualified, yes. I'm not sure a lot of people would find this completely interesting, but I am finding it interesting. The next book, again, I always find myself on the outlying edges of things in BookTube, but I'm a big fan of Ben Lerner novels. I have liked every single thing I've read by him, and this book, Transcription, that came out this year, is a very short, almost novella-length meditation on post-COVID, the infliction of technology on our lives, and also it's about memory, it's about mentorship, the passage of time. It's essentially a Ben Lerner-like author is going to interview his 90-plus-something mentor, and he accidentally drops his phone in some water, so he is not able to record the interview. It's the first night of the interview. Then he goes to the interview, and his mentor, he doesn't tell him about the phone mishap, and the mentor really wants to make sure that what they talk about is recorded because he doesn't know if he'll be able to recreate it. So the author, I don't know what his name is in the book. It could be Ben. I don't remember, but he lies and says he's recording it. Would I recommend Transcription? Yes, I would. If you like the kind of writing that Ben Lerner does and the kinds of ideas that he's exploring in his writing. I really think he's an important thinker, and he really relates his thoughts well. I'm kind of an outlier in terms of really being a big fan of Ben Lerner's writings. I have liked every book I've read of his. I particularly loved The Topeka School. I thought it was incredible. I had an excellent buddy read with Shawn from Shawn Breathes books called The Boy from the Sea by Garrett. The Boy from the Sea by Garrett Carr. And this was such a great family story about a family, I think it was in the 70s, the late 1970s. This family in Ireland ends up adopting a boy that's from the sea because they found him in a boat, and nobody knows where he came from. And so this family adopts him, and it's a story of jealousy because they had a son, and so there's a lot of jealousy between the sons. And there's a lot of sibling stories in here, and there's also a really harrowing boat fishing scene where there's a storm. So the writing is so good. The characters really come alive on the page. And would I recommend it? Yes. For book club, I read a book called The Pisces by Melissa Broder. This is essentially a woman who is kind of lost. She's trying to get her PhD. She's trying to write her thesis. She's teaching. She has bad luck with men. She is just a mess, I think. And she goes to stay and take care of her sister's dog for a summer. And she ends up falling in love with a merman. And this is not my kind of book. And would I recommend it? No. I didn't enjoy it. I would have DNF'd it if it hadn't been for a book club book. I didn't like, I just didn't, it's just not my thing. I don't want to know about people falling in love with mermen. A much more successful novel for me, and one that I definitely would recommend, is called Repetition by Vigdis Hjorth, and this is translated fiction about a girl who is just, on the budding cusp of adolescence. She's just figuring life out, and her mother is so anxious and nervous suddenly about this girl starting to see boys and starting to try and, live a life outside of the confines of their family home. And so that anxiety is just eroding their relationship and making the main character so nervous and so fraught. And so it's a very short novel, but the way that this anxiety is captured, it was so well written. And I really want to read more books by this author, so I would definitely recommend this. I read a book of essays by Anne Enright called Attention, Writing on Life, Art, and the World. And Anne Enright is an Irish novelist and writer, and the first section of the book of essays are all about different authors. There's an essay about the Alice Munro controversy. There's a really good essay about the writing of Toni Morrison. There's a James Joyce essay, and I'm not thinking of all of them right now, but I thought this was the strongest part of these essays. I love reading about authors writing about other authors and their works, and how those works affected the writing of the author who's doing the writing. And so it was very well done. I enjoyed it a lot, and I definitely want to read more Anne Enright. The only novel I've read of hers is The Wren. I love that book. So I need to get into the Anne Enright backlist. One of the shortlisted books from the International Booker Prize, am I getting this right? It was the Booker Prize, I think, was The Witch by Marie Ndiaye. Ndiye. Would I recommend this book? No, I didn't like it. I did not understand what the purpose of it was, other than, it was full of half-formed ideas. It did not coalesce into a story that I thought was very interesting, and I don't know why it ended up on the list. So that's a no. I finished The News from Dublin by Colm Tóibín, and this is a book of short stories. I thought all of the stories were strong. There were a couple that were really standout stories. And then there's a novella at the end that was not about Irish people. And I thought that was less successful. But for me, the rest of the stories, the short stories themselves, I really enjoyed reading one a day until I was finished. And I really like being in his head and with his characters. I finished The Things We Never Say by Elizabeth Strout. I would definitely recommend this. That's a yes. It's the story of a high school teacher in very, very recent times, grappling with his students being very unhappy and sad and scared about things that are happening in the world and trying to figure out their path. He's trying to figure out his path. His son is trying to figure out his own path. And all of these stories come together in a way that only Elizabeth Strout could make them come alive. And that was a 5-star read for me. So it's a definite recommend. And finally, I have Piranesi by Susanna Clark. I've watched people talk about this book for many years. I saw it at the bookstore one day, and I thought, I'm going to finally give this book a try, even though I don't really read fantasy. And I thought it was really good. I read it in just a couple of days. I was intrigued by the puzzle of the book, which is about a house that's like essentially an unending house. And I'm not going to say anything more about it. I kind of think I saw where it was going, but to solve the puzzle. But I thought it was really well written and intriguing and kind of fun and kind of mythological in a weird way. And it did everything for me that I think it was supposed to do. So I would recommend it. That is a summary of all the books I've read recently and if I would recommend them or not. I've created kind of a summer TBR pile of possibilities type list, and I've been starting to read books off of that list. Really going to put my full effort into it when June, July, and August come. I've got a big road trip coming up. If the price of gas is still, not terrible, we're going on a 4,000-mile road trip at the end of July. But I do hope to pop in more and talk to you more about what I'm reading. It's fun. It's really hard when you get off of the track of making videos to get back on the track again. So this is what I can do for now, and I just wanted to come and touch base with everyone. I hope you're doing well. Tell me something you plan to read this summer, and I will talk to you soon. Bye.